through adoption, not a physical birth, is how God chose us to be the most perfect connection to him. And I could understand that after adoption. Like, the bond might not be as powerful, or it might not be as strong. It's pointing back to God and his choice of how he even adopts us as sons and daughters.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Kurtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio, and Ayiesha Woods, Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, and musician. Together, they talk with artists and industry insiders to discover our connection between music and faith. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter at Between Grooves. Now, here's James and Ayiesha.
I didn't even notice the music. Here we are. Episode 240. Oh, you can have one of your laughing spells? We've had a few of those. Some of them didn't make the podcast, but we'll try to be serious for this. Welcome to Between the Grooves. It's your look at music, ministry, and everything in between with today's top Christian artists. And today, a great conversation with a woman by the name of Stacia Hepburn. Now, the thing I find interesting about this conversation, a lot of times when you think of a worship leader, whether it's in your church or a renowned worship leader that you would hear played on the radio, or they've got songs on Spotify and the streaming services and whatnot, you think that that's what they do. That's all they do. A lot of times, even at church, you look at somebody leading worship and you think that's maybe they're the worship pastor in their church and that's their full-time job. But the reality is that there's a lot of people in this industry that have other jobs on the side. In fact, leading worship is just one small element of their life. You know, believe it or not, I do more than just radio. You know, you're a Grammy-nominated artist who is a worship pastor in a church, and that's kind of your livelihood. But beyond that, you've got kids that you look after, including your husband, and you know that.
I got 5 kids.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I better not say that.
It's okay. He won't know you said it. We won't tell him. All of that being said, Stacia is a worship leader, but she also has some other stuff on the go. And her life has dramatically changed as well. And one of the things I'd like for us to chat a little bit about with her is this whole adoption thing. Some people are good at it or want to do it or have considered doing it. I know I've got friends of mine that have adopted, and for them, it's the best thing since sliced bread, if I can use that term.
I hear you.
They have their own kids that they had, and as their kids got older, they really felt that they should be adopting. And it's actually scriptural as well, when you think of it, right? Looking after the orphans, looking after the older generation, the seniors and whatnot. All of that stuff is scriptural. And they have literally put that into practice. And that's what Stacia has done as well. And
I love that.
Yeah. So let's get into this conversation with Stacia Hepburn on Between the Grooves. I'll complain about the winter cold, but I'm not going to complain ever about the summer heat.
Right.
So... anyways, Stacia, tell us a little bit about you. I know you're a worship leader. I know you've done some stuff with nonprofit. You've adopted as well. Is that right?
That's interesting.
Yes.
That's a whole other thing right there. I mean, that's a lot of work, and you've got to have a heart for it. But I know people that have done it, and they wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, I think adoption is just, it's incredible because I feel like God could, I know this might sound a little bit awkward, but God could have chosen to have us as sons and daughters in any kind of form or fashion that he chose. He's God. And through adoption, not a physical birth, is how God chose us to be the most perfect connection to him. And I could understand that after adoption. Like, wow, when people think the bond might not be as powerful or might not be as strong, it's pointing back to God and his choice of how he even adopts us as sons and daughters.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, it's there. It's amazing. It really is.
How many kids do you have as far as adoption is concerned?
Just the one.
Just the one. Okay. And do you have any natural children as well?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. And it all happened through just really situational, just saying yes to God in different areas of my life. I have talked to people who've tried to adopt, especially in America, and sometimes they've struggled. And there's a lot of policies and, government and things in America, and it does sometimes set up challenges. And of course, children can be older, and different people have different views on what that can look like. But for me, it was just saying yes to God. And through, some other areas of my life are with worship and worship leading. And then I Matter Too is the charity. But I felt the call one day from God to go and mentor a child through the organization that I believe the Lord gave me a vision for. And I hadn't mentored someone in quite some time because I was doing other things. And as far as through I Matter Too. And I just, this one situation, the girl was about to age out at 18. Foster children are on their own, or they have some choices, but a lot of them are on their own. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like God saying, this is you need to go. And I went, and I didn't even know she had a daughter at the time. I didn't know anything about her. I just went. And the first time meeting her, I found out she had a daughter who was 2 at the time. And then I met her the following week when I went back. She was living in a group home with her daughter. And that's when my daughter, at the time, came running up, jumped in my arms, and I got to meet her for the first time. And so it was really not an intention as far as through adoption, but God's perfect plan of just saying yes. And because I talk to people that are like, I really want to adopt, and I'm like, I wish I could give them the exact process. I do know I have contacts and things like that. And we know great organizations that can assist with that. But sometimes it can take years. And and other times it happens quickly. But for us, it was quick because it was just saying yes to God and then him literally putting it in my lap.
Wow.
And so it's been my greatest gift. Besides Jesus himself, it really it's been so beautiful.
And how old was your daughter at the time?
She was 2.
Okay.
And so she moved with me a week before her 3rd birthday. Wow. And I was able to adopt when she was 4. So it was pretty quick.
Yeah, you think 2 years is not, or I guess a little over a year is not a long time. And it actually isn't when you look at the whole scheme of things. But like you say, there's a lot of legal obstacles very often that you have to go through. Sometimes you have to jump through hoops and stuff like that. And like you say, some people have to wait a long time.
Yes, that can happen. I mean, there are a lot of good, especially Christian adoption agencies now. And we partner with government and we understand reasons and why. It's just it can be a complicated system, but we should still do it, Yeah. We should still do it in America because the need is so great. And these kids are precious. They are us, they're God's children. Yep. And adoption is good anywhere around the world. But of course I advocate for it here because I see the need.
Did you foster first or just went straight into adoption?
No. And that's the other miracle.
Yeah.
Is that you don't even have to be a foster parent. There are kids out there, and I didn't go through an agency. It was honestly because I said yes to the mentoring, and then it was an affiliation that the child already knew. And so the judge was able to appoint that because I already had that relationship.
Right. I don't want to get too controversial here, but there was that Roe versus Wade thing overturned in the U.S. A while back now. Do you think with that having been overturned and abortion is now illegal, technically in the United States, although I'm sure they're going to find some way to, make it legal in some areas or whatever else and do some stuff. But do you think there's going to be a lot more children that will need to be fostered or adopted in the next little while?
That is a tricky one. It seems like the answer would be yes, absolutely. There's so many now, though. That's why I hesitate.
Right.
There are a lot. There's a lot already. And in my situation, I'm so proud of my daughter's biological mom, who was 14 when she got pregnant. And she shares how people told her to have an abortion. And that was the message over and over to her at her age and just what she was going through. And I just look at, wow, I'm so glad you as a 14-year-old, and I know that is a really tough road, but I'm so thankful she didn't. My whole life would be different. And I'm so glad that she moved forward, that she knew this was a child, and that there was no way. She didn't hesitate. And I know that's hard for for young moms to even not hesitate on that. But for some reason, she had it in her to say no when adults were telling her to do that. But that is not the majority. I think a lot of, especially young moms, definitely would go with whatever their influences are. So it could create more of that. But again, that's a blessing. Every child is a gift from God.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Every child, the Bible says, is a gift from God, no matter how the child was created or what the situation is. There's still a human life made in the image of God. So I do think it could increase. It could potentially, but I know I'm already hearing of like loopholes and things.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about the biological mom, and the issue I have overall with this whole thing is there's a dad there too. Like, pull up your socks, take responsibility, take two to tangle, and where's the accountability, right? So if I can be blunt, everybody always talks about the mom, and it's the mom's decision and everything else. And the mom carried the child for 9 months, but what about the guy? Like, you can have some fun, but just walk away when there's responsibility now? Come on, give your head a shake. Sorry if I'm being really sarcastic, but man, it just ticks me off. It does.
Yeah.
So
yes, and there's always a story. It usually just leads back to not having additional support, additional male, positive, Christ-fearing, loving fathers. Mm-hmm. And it's just a generational sin that keeps repeating itself. And until there's, a man to step in and show a different way, it just repeats. That's why, we love the mothers and the fathers, especially who are raising their sons right now, to be fierce warriors and leaders. Like Ayiesha's, it's like, we need that, like, keep multiplying and sending out more arrows, because we need men like that. That's what our men are raising up. That's what they're learning, whatever they learned. And then they have a child and they either run away from that responsibility because they're afraid. They honestly don't have the tools, the skills, and they don't have Christ, necessarily in them to guide them at that time. And so there's a child that's left abandoned. Right.
Well, 2 thumbs up for the dads as well.
Yes, indeed.
Like, are you a father? I'm curious.
Who are you talking to, Ayiesha? Or me? Yeah, I've got 2 kids. I've got a 21-year-old son and an 18-year-old going on 30-year-old daughter.
Kudos to you. Kudos.
Yeah. Any grandchildren yet?
No. Come on, you're aging me, so no.
Okay.
No. And I mean, I'm sure I will look forward to it one of these days. I think I'm just a kid at heart right now, so that you would just be. It would almost be an insult, right? Because I'm thinking to myself, grandkids, come on, I'm not that old, but my kids are getting on for sure. They are a blast. It's a lot of work. It's interesting. Ayiesha and I had a conversation, and this never made it to the podcast, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to say it now, but I will say it. This was, I guess, a couple of months ago, and it was June. And we were talking Father's Day. Remember that? And this was off mic. Never made it to the podcast. And she was asking me, "So how was your Father's Day?" And I said, "Well, it was great. Just stayed home and relaxed, spent some time with my family." And I said I didn't go to church. And why didn't you go to church? And to be honest, I have not gone to church on Father's Day in many, many, many years. And the reason for that is because on Mother's Day, normally when you go to church, or at least in the churches that I've attended, Mother's Day is all about, moms, you guys
pin flowers.
You've done an awesome job. What a responsibility. This, we honor you. We celebrate you and everything else for all the moms here today. But when it comes to Father's Day, I've always found in church it's been, if there's a message specifically on Father's Day, because some churches just kind of Happy Father's Day and they move on and they go on with their regular series, right? But in a lot of churches, they'll have the Father's Day service, and it's more about, dads, you got to pull up your socks a little bit. You can do better. You got to strive for better. You can do a better job. And I'm thinking you're preaching to the choir here. Like, I'd like to be celebrated like the moms are being celebrated. And so, sadly, I've chosen, because of past experience, I've chosen not to go to church on Father's Day. So, Yeah, so I've got two great kids, and I love them to pieces. And there's always challenges. There's always skirmishes and differences of opinion. But that's because they're older now, and they're their own person, as it were. But they're a blast. I wish I could spend more time with them and do more stuff with them. But
right.
Hey, you need to come to our church on Father's Day next time. I know it's a little hike. Or watch online. We gave our dads tons of, not tons, but they get gifts too.
Right.
I think they had a really cool, koozie, something to put on their mugs, and they all got gifts this year.
See, so me, it's not the gifts, because I don't care about the gifts as much as just what the sermon is about. Yeah, the affirmation.
Affirmation.
I don't want to be criticized, or you got to be doing a better job and stuff. I'd rather, if you're going to have a message about fathers on Father's Day, talk about the fact that, hey, the fathers that are there, we celebrate you because you're here. Now the ones that aren't there, like me now, those are the ones that maybe need the message, right?
Absolutely.
So, anyways,
it's good. It's really good.
Yeah. So hopefully that's a challenge to churches to change the message a little bit. Especially if you're preaching to the choir, or in a lot of church settings, the men in the church are good fathers, Christ-fearing fathers. You might have one or two that are dads, and they're just visiting because their kids prompted them to come for Father's Day.
Right,
well, maybe they'll see how dads get treated on a Sunday service, instead of, you got to be doing a better job, guys.
Hammering down on
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure. So, before we move on.
Oh, no, we're going to keep going on this. Okay.
Tell me if you guys sang Good Father on
Every
Father's
church
Day.
does. Come on.
We do it every Father's Day.
Good Father?
Yes.
Oh, no. Seriously, you're not one of those worship leaders, are you?
Yes, I am. Stacia, did you guys sing Good Father?
I'm trying to remember, and I know that we have. I know that we have on one of the Father's Days. I'm positive.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember this past one. Yeah. If we did. But it is good. That is a good song. I love it.
For my
it's true. It rings true. And earthly dads need to realize it too.
Yes, indeed.
So what's life like for you, Stacia, as a worship leader?
Oh, that's a great question. It's always changing here and there. It's a little busier season right now with, multiple things. Like in the last week, I do songwriting now at my church. So we started just this past week. It's called Radiant Collective is the group. My church is Radiant Church, and I'm part of that worship team. I play guitar there, and then I sing. I have taken some seasons over the last decade of worship leading out and about, being involved at my church, and then through adoption and becoming a mom and COVID and some different time periods, just having seasons of kind of reshifting, focusing time priorities and things. I've recently stepped back into a season of more involvement at my church. So what that looks like right now is weekly sessions just for a few weeks of sort of re-entering back in with vocals and playing guitar and songwriting. So our team is constantly evolving. We have 8 locations now and an online location.
Good gracious. That's a big church.
Yeah. And I think by next year they already have 4, maybe the goal is 2 or 4 new locations. So they're constantly in that mode of growth and expansion. Mm-hmm. So our worship teams are always evolving and, new campuses starting. So that's been exciting to be part of because I was part of the church from ground up. I was able to see the first 50 people, meeting at a different location. And now we have 8 locations all across the Tampa Bay area and expanding. Wow. So that's been exciting to be part of.
How has worship music changed, in your opinion, based over the last few years, whether it be pandemic related or technology wise?
In general, or just specific at our?
Well, in general that you've seen, and also specifically for you, because I was talking with Ayiesha in the past about tracks and how that's been incorporated into worship as well. And that's different from what it was even, well, maybe not 5 years ago, but certainly 10 years ago. And I mean, it was around, and artists, CCM artists performing on stage have done that for years. But in a church environment, it's relatively new in comparison.
That is true. Yes. And when we started, production, all that, it has completely expanded as well. I'm trying to think when we started with those. It might have been in the first years, but of course our first practices were like a small group of us sitting up in a room in a broken down building, an old movie theater. Now we have, full on production creative teams. And we use tracks and clicks and all of that. There's a director at each campus, a music director, who's leading and speaking to us so that's something, if you're out leading worship and you're just bringing a guitar and you're singing, it's pretty much you, God, and the people. But when you add in all the production, you have to adjust and get used to, there's voices speaking to you during worship. And there's messages, and you're going to go with the flow that's different. You might plan out something, but something else, might change, or the pastor might, on the moment also want something different, or, and that doesn't happen all the time, but those are some of the differences too, that you're like, you could have a worship set completely planned if it's just you going somewhere or a small group. Yeah. But then there's other things that can change when you bring in full production. Or maybe something with sound happened. There's just different elements, and but it's really good. And I know at the end of the day, it's to benefit the people and just center them and give them just a different part of the Lord that is of excellence and that is pleasing to Him, and really just to heighten the worship experience, not just in an experience way, but in a closeness with God. But sometimes the behind the scenes, there's different things going on behind the scenes.
So many parts to play in that.
Yes.
A lot of moving parts, and a lot of components, different components that add to the big picture. How much?
And you hope, with practicing and all, you just hope that when it's happening on the service, it's just flowing, right?
Right.
That we get there, it's 6:30. So that we can get through all of that, is there something that's changing, or is there, and just go over the parts and things. But so that when it's live, it's just, you're still hearing a click in your ears, still having different, an MD speaking, but it's really, you are centered on the Lord.
Now, do you guys have multiple services?
We have 4 services our pastor speaks at a location where there's 4 services, then broadcasts out similar. I believe that's Elevation in some other churches, that similar model. And then we broadcast to the others. There's a local campus pastor at each one, and a separate worship team. And they all have different numbers of services, but a minimum of 2 at each campus. The one where I am, we have 2 morning, and then there's a 5 p.m. And that's a great service. And our pastor actually comes to the 5 p.m. as well. So he has a very long day.
Wow.
Well, so do the singers and the artists and the musicians, right?
Yes, but we rotate, which is nice, on the 5 p.m.
Right.
So every 6 weeks, it'll be a different worship team.
Okay.
So that way, yes, it's not the same, like constantly going from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m.
That's a long day.
So, Stacia, you mentioned the voices speaking to you during worship, and just to clarify, it's not necessarily just the Holy Spirit. You're talking about the voices in your monitors. MD being the music director. My question to you: do you find it confusing? Because normally in the past, the worship leader was the leader. And now what is happening in churches is you've got the worship leader, and you've also got a music director, somebody at the keys or another instrument that's kind of giving direction to the singers and the musicians. So who follows who?
Oh, that's a great question. And it can look a little different depending, but ideally you have the MD is really there to follow, like it could be following the pastor's directions, or it's whoever is leading that song. The MD does, it's more instrumental. So they're calling out, like let's say the pastor's going to speak. You just played 2 songs. Now the pastor's coming up for a 3-minute or 4-minute, what they want to share. So the MD is speaking on what we're going to play. They might pick different chord progressions. So the singers might not even be part of that at that time. And then the MD is just speaking out what chords, national number system. They're saying, we're playing 1, 4, 5. And then you're just following along. And then we also feel like what the speaker's doing. So if they're, if they're speaking on something that's increasing in like energy, then the MD is going to speak, so we can increase with the pastor on our energy and like what kind of temp or what we're playing really. And then we bring it back down. And then it's in live when you're actually doing a song. The MD is really just following tracks and what what was practiced basically as well. If a track or something needs to change, they might change that usually before, because then we are playing with tracks too.
Are you 100% tracks, or is it just, every other song or maybe a couple of songs in a worship set?
Pretty much 100 pretty much. Yeah. If the track goes out, you have to go on the fly. Right. But
or you need to end the song early.
They can still the worship leader who is leading a song, they may change the tracks. They may, right before. Right. When we're at that earlier practice, it's not a practice, but when we're doing a run through, they might cut a track or something, or, they're still in charge of arranging. But when we are doing it, yes, we have a track behind it. So with tracks and musicians, how good are the musicians? Like, can they carry it if the track ends or it fades out or whatever? Yes. Honestly, I feel blessed. We have we really do incredible worship leaders, musicians, and yes, and that's happened. So, and you have to, but they are really good. And, the campus directors, the worship leaders, so there's there's auditions and things like that now. Like I said, in the beginning, it was funny because we were just started singing together. We just, was the first groups who were stepping forward to be part of it. And now there's a very thorough audition process. And then they go through training, or anyone that is on, makes it through the audition, then enters into something called Thrive. And that is a couple-month training where they get to go over things like technology and tracks and in-ears. And that way you're not just throwing somebody up. Right. Maybe most people have used in-ears. Most people have that are auditioning, but every now and then there's someone that hasn't. Right. And they're a really skilled musician. They have talent and skill from the Lord. And so you just want to make sure people are comfortable before they're just, hey, you're scheduled on a Sunday. Right. And it's, and then it's singing harmonies together. It's just sort of going through things like that, how we blend, how, just certain things that you can talk through that those weeks long process. Now, and then you'll shadow on a Sunday. So you don't necessarily jump up and just, if you're new on the team, you take a Sunday to just kind of sit with the worship team and watch when we get there and just how it works during the run through. How do you tell someone maybe you'll do better running slides? That's exactly the way you do it, I think. There you go. How can you tell them they're not really good? And honestly, I'm not actually part of the audition process. As far as I went through it myself, but I'm not part of that determination. But knowing those people and knowing the culture of our church, yes, that's a tough one, because, and I think, but what you do and what they've done is finding, like you said, an area to get started. Yes. And encouraging people, because I know this has happened, encouraging people, if you feel a call from God to do this and you truly believe that, here's some things that you could work on, and then come back, and re-audition. And so if someone really feels passionate and they want to put some of the work into that, they should come back and re-audition. So, but that is up to the person then, right? But also there's other opportunities, right? There's other opportunities to serve. And someone just might have a heart for music. They might have a heart for music, but they might enjoy, helping with sound or helping with lights or production or creative team. So if I could offer a suggestion here. And those teams, trust me, I couldn't be involved in those teams. So let me just give a shout out to them because they're amazing. They are, that's a talent too. So hopefully.
I was thinking of Randy Jackson. It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, but that's where I was headed with this thing. So you have musicians. You have some musicians that are paid. Like we know about that in churches where you pay some musicians for whatever reason. Could you not temporarily pay Simon Cowell to come in during the audition process and just kind of, delegate that off to him? That's his responsibility to get rid of the dead wood. Oh, sorry, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but get rid of the people that aren't as qualified for the job, as it were.
Right.
That is,
right.
I know. And another thing we do though that helps with that is there is an online, and I know other churches that do that. If you submit an online video, we do that first, then you get invited to come,
Right.
So sometimes it happens right there where something can get submitted and then, it's not like the next step already. Does that?
Right. No, that's great.
That's how radio stations work. You send your music in. If you don't hear anything, it's probably not going to get played.
It's a no. Right. It's a no for me, dog.
It's a no for me. That's right. Thank you, Randy Jackson. Love Randy. So your role as well as worship leader is also equipping other leaders. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you do?
Great. And are you referring to outside the church? Are you referring to iMatter too?
I'm actually referring to the church, but let's hear about iMatter as well.
Okay. So a lot of my time, I'm in sort of a shift motion here of, being out a little bit more in regards to, even with having my daughter older now, it's a different season. So being out more, there were previous opportunities at churches. Sometimes it's combined with worship. Sometimes it's speaking. Sometimes it's sharing opportunities for iMatter too. And so in this next season, it's more reconnecting and sort of getting out a little bit more for those opportunities. Within the church, really my role is it's with the songwriting and it's being scheduled and it's showing up and it's playing and it's singing.
Right.
And with iMatter too, eventually as we keep hiring like a directors, and I think it's more leaders within iMatter too, that would be raising up people. Like we have a mentorship and we hire tutors. We're doing a food outreach called Weekly Manna, and that is delivering food. So there's been different coordinators and people with that. And really my involvement there have been seasons where I'm leading it all. But we also equip leaders to lead it, where I'm more of now the messaging and getting out and connecting with churches. Again, whether that's through music or whether that's through just giving the message of iMatter too. And hopefully increasing awareness and funding. That really is my next season goal. It has to be on the funding end, because if not, we can never hire, and bring on the people specifically to really be digging in the day-to-day constantly, like in a specific area that's needed in these different outreaches. But, it all mixes together. It really does. Like where I am involved on my worship team, I'm also meeting, with my church on all their campuses and the outreaches, with the outreach director, the mission outreach director. So, but there's one at all the churches, but there's also other organizations, that we connect with. But of course, I love the church. I love people that are moved by God, obviously, to understand the call on, orphan ministry and just the abused and the neglected. I believe no matter what you're doing, it's amazing because we have people on our worship team who are nurses and doctors. Our MD last week, he's a doctor at an emergency room, and I'm telling you, he is a skilled musician. God has gifted people in, it is challenging when you've got the gift of healing or working as a nurse, but you're also gifted in music ministry or worship leading. And I do think sometimes we have motherhood, fatherhood. There are multiple gifts. And I was just talking to someone this Sunday, young leaders at our church, powerful pastor, Sarah. She is an incredible speaker. Her husband, pastoring, leading the college. We have a college at our church that got launched a few years ago. anyway, we're talking, and they're like, we are just solely involved in ministry. Like, we're doing the college, and she does the broadcast services and the social media and stuff. And she's a powerful speaker. But there are people too. So they do have multiple areas that they're doing, but within a church. But yeah, there are people who are then working a hospital shift. They're coming, they're leading worship, and then they're heading off to worship. Or I'm sorry, they're heading off to the hospital.
Right, yeah.
And it's just to manage all that. It really is a miracle from God. But so for me, if you ask, to me, it all has to mix. If it doesn't all mix, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It has to go together. So if I'm at a church for one purpose, you just mix it in with the other purposes.
Yeah. And that's what I love, whether it's in the church or, at a concert type venue or whatever else. That's what I love seeing is people using those gifts and using it for God and for the congregation and the people in the church.
Yeah.
So good.
Each joint supplies the need.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that is it. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Have a great
Bye,
week.
Stacia.
You too.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
That was a great conversation with Stacia. I love her heart, and it's nice to know that God has given her everything that she needs to. She's got her hand in a lot of things.
Yeah, she does.
And but she's got everything that she needs to get it done. So if you want to check out more about Stacia and her organization, go to her website. It's imatter2.com. 2 as in also. Don't you hate when people mess that up? Two.
The grammar police are going to be all over you.
Oh my gosh. I matter.
So two. T-O-O, not T-O, not T-W-O, T-O-O.
Exactly.
I matter too. Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
imatter2.com.
Okay, well, let's get to some artist advice. And this week we hear from Chris Cron and Neon Feather, or Ben Thompson, otherwise known as All Creatures.
I just feel like there is a lot more wiggle room for styles of music in the Christian world. I think if it moves you personally, then there's a good chance that there's a really large collection of people around the world that will similarly move them. And I think that we just need to trust our gut a little bit more and dare to step out and make music that moves us and not just focus on wondering if this will move everyone else, because I just think we need to just trust our own musical journeys, our own musical exposure, and make novel combinations of styles and move things forward. I think creativity is just such an integral part of being a creation, is pushing creativity forward.
And again, I don't know if this is a prescription for success or whatever, but it would just be don't settle. And I think that can be applied to a lot of different things. Don't settle for the same old lyric. Don't settle for wearing the same clothes that every other Christian artist wears. Don't settle for the first iteration of a record label contract. Don't settle for something that you don't really believe in. Don't settle for something that you don't want to do. Never just do something because you are tired or you don't know what to do. Ask questions. Get in there. This is your thing. This is unique to you. So don't settle for something that is not you.
I'm with him on that. When he talked about the lack of creativity, I see it so often, and particularly in Christian music. And I have an appreciation for when people go outside of the box and explore a little. Don't try and make music for radio. Mm-hmm. Just do what God put in you to do and maintain the authenticity and let God do with it what he wants done.
In that vein, I think back to a conversation I had with one of the Smallbone brothers For King and Country, and we were talking about one of their songs, and this was a few years back, so I can't remember what song it was, but he was saying how they went through, 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 different versions of the song before they were happy with the final product that went out. And the one thing I appreciate about those guys is their songs are unique. They're very different. And I like artists that do something different and don't sound like, oh, here's just another pop sounding song, right? So I appreciate artists. And that's the reason why, and I've said this in the past, where I like bands like Queen, where all their music sounds completely different. You know, you can have an album and all the songs are completely different, very unique in their own way. Some songs I don't like, but other songs I think are amazing. But I appreciate the fact that all their stuff does sound different. It also makes me think back to some of the singing competitions where, you know, the judge like Simon Cowell will say, well, make it your own, you know? And it's so true, because it's so easy to get up there and just mimic the original artist or just karaoke your way through life when, you know,
I love that.
They talk about, you know, no more wiggle room in Christian music styles. And it's true. Have your own style. Don't try to sound like the other artists that are out there. And as you said, be authentic in what you're doing. And I also like the comment from Chris about not settling for the same sound, the same music, the same look for that matter. You know? Like it seems like a lot of artists can't afford a pair of jeans because they all have the, you know, cuts and rips in them, you know? So don't settle for that. Buy some jeans that don't have holes in them. Wouldn't that be unique? I'm sorry. Anyways, that is it. There's the music. It's time for us to go. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you for Stacia for hanging with us as well on Between the Grooves this week.
Thanks for listening to Faith Strong Today's Between the Grooves podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with your friends, rating our podcast, or giving us some love on your socials to your amazing friends and followers will only help us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you and share your feedback in an upcoming episode. Send your video or written message to Ayiesha and James on Facebook and Twitter @Between Grooves, or email us anytime, hello@faithstrongtoday.com.